Okay, it is now that good time of 9 minutes past the hour of 3 p.m. 9 minutes past three. We are in conversation with Mr. Corbin. We are in conversation with Mr. Tull. And we are in conversation with Deco over there in Jamaica. As you said, welcome back, one and all. Welcome back, one and all. Welcome back.
Thank you, Sugar.
We're here, good.
Yeah, go ahead. You carry on. You'll carry on. Now, I did pose a question before we went for the pause. I wonder if Nico is interested in answering that question. And starting off. Go ahead.
Would you be so kind as to repeat the question for me? Thank
I totally forgot the question now. What was the question, Fred? I totally forgot the question. So
um,
much things in one time I was doing.
mm,
Um,
you. I believe you had asked what makes
ah,
Jamaicans
correct.
sort of different in
Yes.
how they respond to the COVID-19 thing.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Thanks for jogging my memory. Right. What the question that I posed was, what made Jamaicans so different, and why are Jamaicans rebelling? Because I am monitoring. I got a couple of friends in Jamaica. I got a presenter in Jamaica as well, and we are monitoring what's going on in Jamaica. Why is it that Jamaica or Jamaicans are rebelling against what's going on, and the rest of the Caribbeans are not? Why are we so docile? Do you have a clue?
Okay. I believe it is a combination of things. So, one, you're looking at the infrastructure, right? So when they had this stay home for 14 days or no movement days as they call them, or curfews, we do not have the system here that can ensure that people actually stay home. Moreover, based on how we are set up, it's not like a city in somewhere in India where you are in these flats. I have my neighbor. I can just go and talk to them over the fence. I can just go out the gate and talk to people down the road. But I'm still in my yard. I'm still observing the curfew. I'm still I can still interact with people around me while observing the COVID-19 protocols. And it is that interaction that kind of act as a shield against the kind of mass formation that we see happening in the rest of the world, where people were literally locked in their homes. You couldn't see anybody because you're in an apartment, you're locked inside. And if you go outside, the corridor is literally empty because everybody's inside. For us, we can just hang over the fence and talk to John Brown, or just go out, stand up at the gate and shout down to the neighbor down the road. Moreover, we didn't have this system where people could stay home. The government had to make exceptions. Obviously they tried to say, oh, well, these are essential, whatever. No, it wasn't. You just could not lock people down because we do not have the wherewithal to finance that kind of measure. So I was still going about, I went to work. It never affected me because I went to work every day and I just walk past the blockade and go about my business. So that kind of isolation and the psychology, the tyranny of that isolation that many other people experienced, most Jamaicans did not, because we were still in communication with each other. We were still connected socially. And it is not via the internet, it's like physical social connection. So that was why we weren't like that. And then Jamaicans Jamaicans are rebellious by nature. So if you're going to tell us to do something and it does not make any sense to us, we are just not going to do it. Full stop.
Tell me about it.
That's just how Jamaicans have been. And if you look back at any kind of law or whatever that the government may have instituted, we do what we want to do regardless, because people were having parties in spite of the fact
Hmm.
that they banned parties. There were, like, every single day you hear that police shut down a party somewhere.
Hmm.
So it's just a thing where, and we don't really take stuff seriously. Like, it's a thing where we find humor. It doesn't matter what is happening. we don't let it get us down. We don't sit in the corner and cower and fear and oh my God. We're gonna find some humor in this situation. And I think it is that kind of attitude, that kind of disposition that we have, that intrinsic ability to see the bright side of things that perhaps contributed to us not being so much into the psychosis. Moreover, we have a deep religious um, affinity, and people. There was this idea out there that boy, this thing is the mark of the beast. So once that became attached to the vaccines, there was no way under the face of the sun that you would get most Jamaicans. People were just like, it's mark of the beast, I'm not taking it. And it doesn't matter whether it was true or false. It's mark of the beast, I'm not taking it, full stop, argument done. So, so it was a combination of things that contributed to the low vaccine uptake. Plus, we had celebrities like Tanya Stevenson, DJ Rush, Sprague Benz, DJ Kentucky, actively exposing the lies.
Wow.
Actively exposing the lies and showing people that, see, they say this and this is the real truth. And I was very instrumental too, because that's how I got connected to Fred. Because I never spoke to Tanya before, and that's how I got connected with Tanya. There's another lovely Paula Hurlap that I got connected with. I got connected with a reporter. What's her name? Zara Burton. Because I had submitted access to information request to our government. Because when I heard them talking about, the hospitals were overrun with COVID people, and if you don't want to be on a ventilator, you better stay home or you take the vaccine or whatever. I'm like, this does not make any sense, because I'm going out every day and I'm not seeing the kind of desolation that is being perpetrated on the news. Moreover, I had read the document by Dr. What's that former Pfizer scientist? Dr. Michael Yeadon and colleagues, who dissected the research paper on the PCR test and showed where it was fraudulent. That Christian Drosden out of, I think, Germany, who who came up with that PCR test, he lied in his research. And they went through the paper in granular detail and begged the European Medicines Agency and the UK Health Security Agency to discontinue the PCR test on the basis that there is no way the scientists could have had a sample to calibrate the test against, when at the time when the paper was published, they had not isolated anything. So it's like, how did you make a test for something that have not been identified and isolated yet? It doesn't make any sense that here you have a test. What did you calibrate it against? You understand? So I was instrumental too because I had my little over on Instagram. They shadow ban me. They do all manner of things with my stuff, but I'm still over there, telling people this is false. I went on the CDC's website. I analyzed their MMR, monthly morbidity report, MMR reports, and I went through them. They did a study on mask, whether the mask mandates work, and it was like 0.1%. And I'm like, okay, how is that significant? There was a 0.1% reduction in cases and a 1.1% reduction in death, and that was sufficient to tell everybody that they must wear a mask and stay home. That makes no sense. So I showed all of those reports to people. When I went into the access to information request, because what I wanted was, okay, you cannot just say, because what they were saying is that, 90% of the beds at, let's say, Kingston Public Hospital are occupied by COVID-19 patients. And I knew that has to be demonstrably false. So I submitted an access to information request to the Ministry of Health, which they did not respond to, even though they are legally obliged to issue a response within 30 business days. They did not. So instead of writing back to them, I wrote to there's a tribunal that is set up to handle any kind of, if they're not responding to the request. So I wrote to the tribunal, and the tribunal wrote to them. And the same day, that the tribunal wrote to them, they responded to me.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave me the information, and so I went public with the information, and that is how I got connected with Tanya and the reporter. I was like, where did you get this information from? Like, but you're a reporter, you're supposed to know that you can submit an access to information request to any ministry and get information that you want, because they work for us.
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked at the bed complement that they had, so what they did was, let's say there are 3,500 beds in the hospital, a specific hospital. They'll allot, say, 500 of those beds for COVID-19, which is just a fraction of the overall bed complement for the hospital. So when they report the 90%, to give the impression to the unsuspecting John public that 90% of the entire hospital is full of COVID-19. It was just 90% of those 500 beds. So I brought that to the attention of the public to say, no. They are using statistics to misrepresent facts. So you have 500 beds out of 3,500. It's just an example. That's not the exact bed complement. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm just using the 3,500 as an example, right? So you have 3,500 beds at this specific hospital. 500 of that entire bed complement was allotted to COVID-19 patients specifically. So once you come in, you have a COVID distress, there's a COVID bed reserved for you. Of that 500, 90% is occupied by COVID patients. So it's not the entire hospital. So you saw it was it's kind of like they're manipulating how they present the data, because you're not technically lying, but you're conveying a meaning that is false.
Somebody has already phrased that for you. It's called lies, damned lies, and statistics. It's like a school saying, oh, we got 90% passes in mathematics, but how many children they send in? 4.
Exactly. So the sample size is not significant to be representative of anything. It doesn't mean anything, because you could have picked the 4 brightest students in math and keep the dunce ones back, just so you can give a false impression that you're doing well in math.
Yeah.
Mm.
I want to
that is what they were doing.
Yeah, this is exactly the same principle that is being used here in Barbados to tell the public that digital IDs are the best thing since sliced bread. So CBC television gets and interviews 3 people. Mm-hmm. 3 people. Okay, they hold a live interview with 3 people outside of the Trident ID card issuing center. And because those 3 people gave positive responses, the Prime Minister then goes ahead and cancels or invalidates or tells the Electoral and Boundaries Commission that everybody has until October, the end of October, to get digital IDs, or everything else will be invalidated. And this is precisely what happened yesterday. Based on the CBC, broadcast, there are only 3 people. Okay? That's what happened.
I want to get a point here quickly, please, about this COVID-19 and so on. Yeah, I'm here on the World Economic Forum website, and you shall find this interesting. The article is entitled "My Carbon: An Approach for Inclusive and Sustainable Cities," and the date is September 14, 2022. So I know this is very recent. But there is a paragraph here which you need to hear about, and I think some people have written about it, quite a few people have written about it. There's a paragraph that is headed, "COVID-19 was the test of social responsibility." Hope you hear that. In other words, the way people hunkered down and battened down and cowered out of COVID-19 was a test of social responsibility. And here's what they're going to say in the paragraph now. A huge number of unimaginable restrictions for public health were adopted by billions of citizens across the world. There were numerous examples globally of maintaining social distancing. In other words, they're saying people were showing social responsibility. And that is why they're going to go on to talk now about the whole question when they introduce the digital ID and so on. They're going to say, we did it before, so we can do it again.
Correct. I wanna ask Nicole, and this is not only for Jamaica. I wanna ask Nicole about Jamaica, but also for the rest of the Caribbean. Have you heard any talk, or do you know of any talk about what the rest of the Caribbean is feeling or thinking about Prime Minister Mia Mottley being the Caribbean leader? And I say that because of what she's actually doing to Barbadians, what the people of the Caribbean or Jamaica is feeling. Because once she becomes the Caribbean leader, it's gonna be hell to pay. I say that. We see what's going on in Barbados now. So, have you guys in Jamaica or throughout the Caribbean thought about that? What's going on?
Okay. From my personal vantage point, I am not seeing where at least the people that I am exposed to are aware of
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm not seeing that. People are aware that uh, Barbados has become a republic,
Mm-hmm.
and they are they're like there's an atmosphere of celebration. Like it's about time, that's a good move. But it's the illusion of a republic is not like a true republic. So people don't understand that, okay, you're now a republic. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And if you are now a republic, the vestiges of colonialism, the participants in that structure should not now be your elected representatives. So whomever were the ones involved in the parliamentary democracy that you have, or whatever kind of constitution, a shadow constitution from the Westminster model that you had, those persons, because they would have espoused the ideals of that system and bring it into the republic that you're trying to create, thereby corrupting it unwittingly or wittingly, and so you will have problems like in the very short term in your now new republic. So Mia Mottley should not be whatever her title is now. I'm not sure. Maybe it's president, the president of Barbados. She should have been, she should have stepped down, and somebody who is not a part of the remnants of our, you know, slave slave masters it should be a new, fresh government. That's what I'm saying. So Jamaicans don't really understand politics. When it comes to politics, we have been so uh, uh, indoctrinated into the JLP and the PNP, and so that's all most Jamaicans can see. A lot of Jamaicans will hear about being a Republican, what have you, and they'll just say yes, not understanding what that actually means. So it's kind of like business as usual, so to speak. People are not really concerned about what is happening in the Caribbean as far as Motley being this new czar dictator of, because that's what it really is, covertly.
Mhm. I think that idea of people not being interested in or understanding politics is so throughout most of the Caribbean and certainly Barbados, right? As a matter of fact, I think that I said it earlier. People have decided that once we have an election and we put those 30 whatever persons in parliament, that's the end of responsibility. They're supposed to do their job, etc. As I said before, that's trust that you cannot afford to give any longer. And to some extent, there are a lot of people in Caribbean society, certainly in Barbados, who are in the church who believe that politics is inherently dirty, so I can't touch it. There's some denominations that don't tell you can't even vote, right? People can't vote. So that is a problem because I argued on a program that I was on with Fred just a few days ago, right? Politics is about power/authority. There's only one source of authority on the earth, and that was given in the Garden of Eden, because one be or not, where God said, increase my bite, and said, dominate the earth. That's authority given. So all authority comes from one place. That is why if as a husband, you abuse your wife, you're abusing authority. If as a father, I abuse my children, I'm abusing God's authority now. And it's time that Christians start seeing that. We can have this divide between the high polloi, the masses, and the politicians. And so in fact, as you said, Shugadi, they are servants, That's my take on that.
I completely and totally agree with that. I completely agree with that. At the end of the day, our entire colonial imperial paradigm that we are still not emerged from, but we're still in the process of learning from, has been about the abuse of authority.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, the dehumanization of our people and the continuing dehumanization of the Caribbean people by implementation of digital IDs, where we are being made just numbers instead of allocating us to the status of a recognized regional sovereign people.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a thought.
Hello?
Yeah, we're here. I just had a thought. And my brain is a brain that is work. As soon as somebody says something, it starts working, it starts churning. The reason why, and I see it, the reason why we are numbers for the computer system, or they want us to be numbers for the computer system, because everybody knows, or who don't knows, that computer works on binary codes. They can only understand binary codes. So if I input a virus and this binary code number, i.e., let's say Mr. Tell your number is 164738, and I put at the end or in the middle of that binary code number, a virus to eliminate you at a certain time, then the computer has to work on that. But if you are just a name, if you are named with letters, it can't work on it. It can't handle it. So that's why that is why we are numbers. And I do, using my engineering and my background there, I am thinking straight. You know what? That's why they want us to be numbers. Because when they want to eliminate us, they can put whatever they want to put in those numbers. Because Mr. Corbin is a terror, a young terror. He's not standing. He's not doing what the government says. So you know what? Let me put. We are not going to take him out now. We're going to put in 3 months' time, he dropped down dead. Walking the streets of Bridgetown, he dropped down dead. Right?
Delayed action.
That's exactly what I come up with this number. I don't know, Fred. I don't know what you think. I don't know, Nico, what you think. But that's me. That's what my brain is work. My brain works like that.
Well, I think that there is some merit in what you're saying, and at the end of the day, the only way that they would be able to achieve that is if, number one, I lost the protection of the Spirit of God. Number two, I lost the protection of the Spirit of God by willingly allowing myself to be injected with gene editing technology, where a third strand was added to my DNA. Right. And four, where I took the conscious decision to do that in denial of the Holy Spirit of God and what has been placed in my life. Those three decisions and those three linkages, unfortunately, have overtaken the people of our region with unprecedented force, where they have made the conscious decisions to defile their rightful life and deny the Spirit of God and the protection of our Father, and taken gene editing technology, and thereby can be controlled and eliminated at will, because they exist as a number in a system that was specifically designed to eliminate them.
Nico?
That is my cue. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, notwithstanding Fred's points, which are factual in and of themselves, but I tend to like to lend context to what is happening in the society, because there are a lot of things that are being done to people physically and psychologically. that impacts how they behave. There was a psychological tyranny, that's my own coinage of that phenomenon, that happened during the COVID 19 pandemic. The British government has conceded that they did use psychologists to craft how they deliver their message to the British public. And they used particular words and phrases that would incite fear in people, and that is a psychological warfare in and of itself. So we have to understand that they are using the propaganda machine. Because remember, if you could Google COVID-19 right now, nothing about the actual research that any of us on this panel have done will pop up in that Google search. So an unsuspecting John public who may hear us talking now and be like, okay, I'm going to do my own research. Let me see if what these people are saying is true. The institutions that are vested with source credibility, that we put our trust in, are the purveyors of myths and disinformation. So when they go to the WHO to see what is happening with the vaccines, it's like, oh, the vaccines are safe and effective, and how many billion people take it, how many billion doses have been administered, and basically there are no adverse reactions, right? But we are saying, well, 30,000 people died in the United States of America. There have been over 2 million reports of adverse reactions and deaths out of their vaccine adverse reporting system. But you will not see that on the CDC's website. You will not see that on the FDA's website. You will not see that promulgated anywhere on any official government website that people vest trust in. So for when we are speaking, it's like, okay, well, you're not a scientist. You didn't go to Harvard or Yale. You don't have a degree in epidemiology or whatever. So why should I listen to you? Who are you? And these are credible questions. People would have a right to ask those questions. Because if I cannot trust my government, if I go to the doctor tells me that the vaccines are safe and effective, but Fred Corbin is on radio telling me that it's not, who do I listen to? I turn on the news, and my Minister of Health is telling me that the vaccines are safe and effective. Who do I believe? You know what I mean? I listen to a doctor out of Harvard. I listen to a doctor out of the University of California. I listen to an MIT scientist, and they're all telling me that the vaccines are safe and effective, and you should get boosted, and you should this, and you should that. Then we have to understand that when people are being bombarded with these external stimuli from sources that are vested with credibility, then we can't too fault them for how they respond. That is what has been happening, and these things have been simulated. So these what is happening now has been simulated. And how do I know this? If you should Google the SPARS pandemic, 2025 to 2048, and read that document, you will realize that back in 2017, the John Hopkins Center for Biosecurity wrote this white paper on a coronavirus outbreak somewhere in the United States. And when you read that paper, almost word for word, down to the tweets. Remember, this is a simulation document, So they have tweets and celebrities, this celebrity tweeting whatever, down to the very tweets in the document mirrored what happened. The CBDC tweets is just you just exchange COVID-19 for whatever fictitious virus they made up in that simulation document. It is online right now. So they have been planning this kind of thing for years. So when they are now executing the plan and people have fallen prey to that plan, then it's kind of hard to blame the victim. I know that we can say, well, it's common sense, blah, 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 but most people consult their trusted doctor friend. I know someone personally who said, well, I have a friend who went to UE and he's a doctor and blah, blah, blah. And I spoke to him and he showed me the research and I took the vaccine. Literally, that happened. So in most cases, people don't just wantonly disregard what we're saying. They are going to people that they trust in the medical and scientific community to say, I have a good friend, Nikoi, and he has his head on his body. He is very intelligent. I know that he tends to do his research, and he's bringing all this information to me to say, "Boy, the vaccine is a biological weapon. COVID-19 was manufactured in a lab somewhere between Wuhan and the University of California, Chapel Hill, and I don't know what to believe. So, what say you?" And the doctor friend is going to give them the government line. The vaccine is safe and effective. Take it.
Can I suggest something, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm listening and I'm trying to get underneath the symptoms, you see, because hopefully in the rest of this discussion, I'm going to get to talk about what's the way forward.
Aye.
And I'm going to enunciate a 5-step process. But right now, let me say to you that what our friend here is really suggesting, if you listen carefully, is a problem of our educational system. And I put it very quickly,
Correct.
and I wrote a very long article on it, right? People have not been trained to do what we call critical thinking.
Yep.
Exactly.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it don't matter that there's a government speaking and other people, what critical thinking would induce you to do is to say, all right, there are these different people saying different things. Let me take a look at what they're saying. All right. So based on what I'm reading, this is the conclusion I should draw. In other words, you've come to the conclusion yourself. We don't have that here. And that's the reason why we say we have an oral society. Listen to it, because you go have a friend you can trust and you're going to hear what he says, not read something somewhere, See, that's the part of the problem you got in the Caribbean radio, especially in Barbados radio. I'll stop there and let you go.
I'd like to support what you just said there, Alan, is that yesterday I had a conversation with a secondary school teacher. And I asked her, I said, do you teach critical thinking in your class? And she looked at me like if I had said, something that she did in a foreign language. And then she said, pardon? I said, do you teach critical thinking in your classroom?
You asked the wrong question, Fred. You asked the wrong question. You could ask her if she understands what it is.
Yeah, she said to me, critical thinking. How do you arrive at that should be something that should be taught? I was absolutely and totally dumbfounded. Here it is, you have a secondary school teacher that does not know what critical thinking is.
I can give another one. I had the privilege of teaching or supervising some students at Earlston College several years back. And one of the things I asked them to do is evaluate these different methods of teaching. And they couldn't start because they do not know how you evaluate anything. I've been associated with CXC as well. I'm not going to say in what capacity, but I can tell you that when you put that question in the exam paper, the students don't know how to do it. They don't know, for example, what I'm going to say now, which I've had to say in response, to evaluate anything, you have got to get criteria. Yeah. If you don't have criteria, you can't evaluate anything, because evaluate means to say this is bad, this is good, this is excellent, this is poor, this is correct, this is not so. You see, that's what evaluation is. And if nobody ever taught you that, you will never be able to do it. That is the state of play still in our educational system.
Correct. You're so true. You're so true.
Yes,
that's something I observe here when I actually delivering lessons, and I say to the students, okay, this is what I say, but don't take what I say. I want you to go and do your own research and come up with your own feasibility study, your own study, your own answer, and then we put it together. No, up to last week. Well, yeah, last week, I made my students because I do something called fabrication, and I got them making a realignment tool or using a spirit level, making up the brackets and everything like that. And they could not fathom how this thing is going to work. But lucky for them, I had made up one. I made up one Long before all the rest of the students come in, I made up one, brackets, cut out everything, pull it, assemble it all together, and said, this is how it's supposed to look, this is how it's supposed to work. Now you gotta go and make your own up. I am not, half of these students, Fred, and you can laugh at this. Fred, half of these students do not know how to use a file or a hacksaw. And
That's
these
surprising.
and this is big 18 and 20 odd years, 18 plus students. And I'm like, what? And I asked this question before. What are schools teaching their students? What are schools throughout the Caribbean teaching their students? What?
The
The answer
students
is a
are
syllabus.
being indoctrinated. They're being indoctrinated. There is no place for critical thinking. You must regurgitate what you are being told without any form of understanding of
Mm,
what it is that you're being told. You're not supposed to question. When I was going to
Mhm.
college, I had a similar issue. I always got into it with my lecturers because everyone else sits in the lecture hall, listens, write notes, don't even know what they're writing, but they're writing anyway. And I'll be sitting like, okay, but this doesn't make any sense to me. And I started asking questions. And there was one class where they all laughed at me. I don't remember what I made a statement in the class, and everybody started laughing at me. And obviously I shut up. And the teacher um, quieted everyone down and then asked, "Why are you laughing?" And now everybody was up like, "But sir, Wednesday is stupid." You know what I mean? I was like, the teacher's like, "No, it is correct. So why
Mhm.
are you laughing?" And that is
Mhm.
when everybody was like, "Oh, now we are the idiots." So
yes.
it's a we have a society that is churning out factory workers in a sense. So even though we are no longer in um in the Frederick Douglass era, that first revolution period where it was like the factory worker and their processes. We are now in the 21st century where we're supposed to be advanced human beings. We are still being taught a curriculum based on that old ancient model. And the school system is set up in such a way that you can't question authority. Otherwise, you're penalized for it. You must obey, you must comply, you must do what you're told, and you must absorb what you're being given. And
Right.
so these are the people that are pushed out into society, being
Mhm.
taught, being forced, because remember, it's forced upon you. If you're in grade 8 and the teacher is telling you something you can't, what are you going to do? You just have to do what the teacher says. If the teacher says 1 plus 1 equals 3, you have to write 1 plus 1 equals 3. Otherwise, you're not going to advance to the next level, or you're going to get a bad grade. Your report is down, whatever the case might be, because there is no room for thinking critically. There's no room for thinking outside of the box. Because when you do that, you are ostracized, and everyone wants to be a part of some group. So when you go out in society, you have these essential zombies that are just walking around and just doing what they're told, following orders, or like automatons.
You,
Mhm.
you know,
Exactly.
Nico, what you saying there, right? I probably must be one of one of very few of these educators. I welcome students to challenge me. I
Mhm.
even in my decision, even in my delivery, I say this to all of my students. Everyone can tell you this. Every one of them they could call and said, he always said to us, I will not give you all the correct answers at every single time. I will put some lies in there.
Mhm.
Let's see what you do.
Mhm.
Right?
That's right.
Let's see what you do. So I am not going to give you the answers to every single thing and let you regurgitate it back to me like a cow. Hell no. What I'm doing is I'm going to give you some answers and then I'm going to embroider it a bit with some lies and see what you do. If you're going to regurgitate those
And
lies to
you
me.
and you always know who's listening to you because when you put in that untruth
Mm-hmm.
and you hear silence, you can tell who's saying. You can see some ice saying, "Oh, wait, what are you saying? Ain't right, sir." And
Right.
the others wondering about what I understand what you're talking about because that's my strategy as well too. You
Right.
can question anything I say because I'm not some stage on a stage that has everything. Especially my field is very marketing. There's no hard and fixed knowledge in marketing, so you can't come in the classroom and say thou shalt do this because this shall work this way. That's nonsense. This
Yeah.
is knowledge. That kind of knowledge is created. as you go along by the people who engage in it, who practice it, and those who research in it. A lot of teachers don't understand that concept of the creation of knowledge, you see, as you go along. They don't understand that concept.
Well,
Yes, and the schools, well, we have to understand that the schools are businesses too, in a sense, and they do have their retention policy and stuff like that. So there is a portion of it that is expecting that students will fail and we'll have, we'll have to resit because I lectured for a time. And in my classroom, what I try to do is to it's kind of you want to facilitate discovery. Like we're discovering things together. I don't know everything. Yes, I am here to facilitate you learning about this subject matter. And in so doing, I too may end up learning something new as well. Because knowledge is ever evolving. I can't know everything. I'm not gonna know it. You know what I mean? And that is what I try to encourage them to do, even though they tend to kind of want to be constrained by what they already were taught. So it's a battle when you come with an unorthodox, I'm doing here quotes here, unorthodox way of lecture.
yeah.
They may be resistant to it at first because okay, well I just go in my other lectures and the teacher come and read from the textbook and that's the end of the class. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Because you ought to be able to think. I want you to having left here learning something. You must learn something. It's not about giving me back the answer that you expect me to say is correct. Why did you get that answer? How did you arrive at that answer? Do you understand why you went through the processes that you did to arrive at that answer? Because that is what is important. Is not the outcome that is important, is understanding the process that got you to that outcome. So that is what I tried my very best to instill in my students but it requires a certain kind of passion, a certain kind of
That's right.
how do I put it? A certain kind of fairness in you as an
Humility as well,
individual,
sir.
and
Humility, sir.
humility to say, well, I'm not just gonna just come here and do my job. I care about these people. I want to see them excel, and I'm going to do everything that is within my power and ability to help them to get there. If you are teaching and you don't have that in you, even if teaching is not your thing, it doesn't matter. You're standing in front of a class with a bunch of people's future in your hands. You have a responsibility to them. If you don't see it as I have a responsibility to these people, then you should not be standing in front of them.
Well,
And that is how I looked at it.
well, you said something very interesting that myself and Mr. Levy over in Jamaica have been saying a long time since what 90. I will go as far as 2007. We were saying this. Teaching and education has now become a business. The more bums on seats that you can get, the more money the government will issue. It shouldn't be about business. It shouldn't be about money. It should be about educating the mindset of the youngsters or educating the mindset of the learners. That's what it should be about. So this is a problem, and I don't like any government anywhere in the world that maybe are privy to this discussion to start looking at forgetting about business in terms of education model and start going back to education as it should be. Maybe a lot more things will go right. News just in. Breaking news. Mega protesters take over London. Thousands join Just Stop Oil Eco Warriors demonstrate cost of living campaigners to set alight to their energy bills. A mass protest against Iran regime in the capital. So that's breaking news in here on 246 Bajan Vibes. News up front. Mass mega protesters take over London. I'll probably see the news outline later on this evening. It is 7 minutes to the top of the hour. Freddie, you want to come in and say anything before we go for a quick pause for calls?
Yeah, well, I think that Alden actually has a little bit of a educational program there for us that he would like to go through,
Mm-hmm.
and I would like to thank Nico so very much, Nico, very much for joining us this morning. And I think when we come back, we can let Mr. Tull walk us through his solutions-oriented program so that everybody understands exactly where we're going and what we were discussing. I just want to thank Nico very, very much for outlining the entire digital tyranny that we are facing.
Mhm.
And I would encourage everyone to go on Amazon and buy his book,
Okay.
Central Bank Digital Currencies, and everything you need to know about Central Bank Digital Currencies by Nico Emils.
Right. Okay. Well,
Thank you, sir.
what they're gonna do is go for the pause for the call. But when
Yeah,
Alden come back, we don't want to give the government of Barbados or the government of the world too much information because they need to be paying for this info. Honestly, they need to be paying for this info solution. It don't make sense. And I say this because I look at it not yesterday town hall meeting, the town hall meeting where this gentleman got up and said was talking to our prime minister, Mayor, and then he said, "Oh, he got an outside girlfriend." I thought that this town
I
hall
saw that one.
yeah, this town hall meeting is supposed to be a serious thing. I ain't about to making jokes and laughing joke about this. This is something serious. We want to know.
Let me comment on that.
Go ahead.
Let me just comment on that.
Go ahead.
Okay. The person that stood at that town hall meeting has a history of supporting the Barbados Labour Party.
Oh.
He had a t-shirt saying that.
Basically, what he did yesterday was that he gave the Prime Minister full credence in pursuing a criminal agenda for this country. And as far as I'm concerned, that particular person that spoke at that town hall meeting yesterday should be removed from society. That's all I got to say on that.
This going to be hot. Let me come back.
Yeah, let me go for the pause for the cosmo. Right, let me go for the pause for the cosmo. Let me come back. It's fire. Let's do this.